Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Friday, April 6, 2018, and this is our weekly Country Roads with Winston Shrout. And of course, we have Winston with us. Welcome, Winston. How are you?
Well, doing pretty good. How y'all doing out there in the bleak East Coast?
It's bleak, let me tell you, and I need some cheering up. I hope you can cheer me up.
We do our best.
I wanted to remind our viewers, I'm going to screen share real quick at the top of our report here that that we have our BitChute page, which is right here. You can find all of our GoldFish reports right here. Not the archive. This is just from 199 till present, because it's going to take a very long time, folks, to upload that. And then also I wanted to screen share the other page that I have here, which is a new YouTube channel. And I don't want everyone getting too excited about it because, you know, how YouTube is lately, and we're really not quite sure. But this is it here. So this is the YouTube channel, and we have our current, since 199, we have them here. The reports, the POTUS reports, though, I have to tell you, you need to look for the link that will be published. It will be unlisted because they seem to have problems with our POTUS reports for some reason, and they flag our accounts. So you have to go to the GoldFish Report news page on Facebook to find the link there. And then also we'll probably have them posted on the website, which I was deciding to do. So there will be some missing reports in the chronology of the page that you'll see here, but those missing reports will have a link on the website. And folks, that's what we have to do to survive today. In this age of this extreme censorship, it's really driven us to alternatives that, are more work for everybody, including us. So it's a bummer. We're bummed, but we are surviving. We are moving forward. The only thing is that all of our previous reports are not available. Up to 199. So those will be uploaded. They will be available for our viewers, but it will take some time. And as I said in my previous reports, we've had to resort to alternatives that are much more costly. So it would be really great if our viewers could participate and help out with that. And you can become a patron, go to our Patreon page, or you can go to PayPal, to our website, and you can donate and participate that way as well. And that's on our website. So Winston, thank you for being patient and waiting. And of course, we had this major YouTube situation happen that has disappeared in the news. And just to make a note, and I really can't go on without commenting about this, there's a lot of problems with this event that happened at YouTube. And we'll talk about it Monday on the POTUS report. But if you notice, folks, it's not, this person doesn't fit this profile of what they're trying to push their agenda for. So I'm highly suspicious of what happened. I don't really know, but it does seem that it is related to the censorship, how it demonetizes people, how you lose your subscribers, how you lose your income, and that has to be antitrust. I don't know what you think about that, Winston, but you can't have this, even if it's private, this company that provides these services to people who are making a living on it, and then they just delete them randomly and you have no recourse. And it seems, unfair practices, quite honestly. And it seems like it would be antitrust. I don't know if you have a
Well, I
comment
don't
on
know
that.
so much about antitrust, but they are not a private company. I mean, people always say about this, because we've spent a lot of time in the past talking about private and public, but YouTube is using the internet. They're using public money. They're incorporated. So they're not private. They're absolutely not private. They are public. And some of the commenters, who have talked about this, I mean, I think maybe, Jerome Carsey and maybe Jim, some of those, have pointed this out, that, they're actually a public utility. And so, no, they can't just act how they want to act. I don't know, it has so much to do with antitrust as it does with simply, a public service. And they're getting public money. They're using public money. They're using public banking. They're going out to the public. So, all this story about private company can do whatever they want to do, absolutely not true.
I think it's in context between like government, so it would be that kind of government and private partnership. They keep saying that, but you're saying it's really not private. You're saying it is
Of
public.
course, it's not private. They're using public money.
It's a public company. It's publicly traded, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, get off of it. They've got an EIN number. They have an employer identification number. That's how they're operating. They're not a private trust. They're not a common law trust. They're nothing on the private side. It's all public. Everything they're doing is totally all public. They are a public utility.
Mm.
I mean, all this other stuff's ridiculous. But let's not get to hammering on that too much. The only one thing I want to see come out of this, I really want to see the coroner's report on this, the body that they claim did that killing. There's something very unusual about that body, if it was a body.
Right. We have some people
So,
whose opinions are that they think the whole thing is an AI program and that it's possibly a, CGI, the whole thing. It's
yeah.
very suspicious. It's very suspicious, I have to say.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate, but we'll just have to get, we'll get it all figured out one day. But that's not my major concern in life. My major concern in life is what happens with people. This is an event that happened, that got on the news, all kind of crazy things that surrounded it and whatnot. Okay, it's just another one in a long series of, pardon my expression, bullshit events. And so, I mean, I looked at it, and said, okay, here's what's going on. But, it's not a major concern.
Not at all, but I run a 24/7 news site. So for
I
me, I
know.
got to know what's going on. For me, there's nothing but analysis, but what's interesting is that it just stopped. I mean, these
Mhm.
other shootings, right, which are all orchestrated, they beat them to death on the mainstream media, and this
Yeah.
just disappeared. So
Well,
something's very strange about it.
YouTube does not want bad publicity, so they would squelch any kind of information. But like I say, I would really like to see somebody get that coroner's report. I want to see what, not
Yeah.
who. I want to see what that
What?
was.
Oh, so you're thinking it was an alien?
No, it's not an alien.
Yeah. No?
Anyway, let's not
Okay.
get off on more speculation on conspiracy theory and all that kind of stuff.
All right. Very good.
I want to start out today, a little bit of humor, to get everybody all uh, feeling good spirits and everything. Because what I want to do today is, there's a few items as I've gone back and reviewed some of our reports the last few times. There were a few things that I had not. I felt like I could have added at the time that I had not. So there's a few things I want to go and tie together in support of what we've talked about in the past. So if you're ready, though, we'll do a little bit of screen sharing here with a little bit of humor.
We can use some humor. I can use some today on a Friday. I should be much happier because it's a Friday today, but it was,
Well,
you know what, just Verizon kind of really aggravates me. I don't know if, people really, have the same experience as I do, but it's like how many times you try to speak to a live person in customer service and it's, you
yeah,
have
you're
to,
talking to somebody in India or Pakistan. I've been through all that.
oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So let's talk,
Anyway,
let's have some fun.
just for fun here, this article here, it's actually labels on products that we typically use. So anyway, this article here says, in honor of stupid people, here's your card.
That would be,
So it says, in case you need further proof that the human race is doomed to stupidity, here are some actual label instructions on consumer goods. Okay. It says, on a Sears hair dryer, the instructions are, do not use while sleeping. Then
Here
the commenter said, shoot, that's the only time I have to work on my hair. And then on the outside of a bag of Fritos, it says, you could be a winner. No purchase necessary. Details inside.
Shoplifter special.
Oh, somebody's, I don't know who puts this stuff together. All right, here's a really good one. On the bar of Dial soap, directions are use like regular soap. what, what, what's with that? Then on some of the Swanson fruit frozen dinners, serving suggestion defrost.
Serving suggestion, defrost. Just a suggestion. Just a suggestion. You can eat
Just
it
a
frozen.
suggestion. Yeah, on this one Tesco's dessert said it's printed on the bottom. Do
Tiramisu.
not turn upside down.
Printed on the bottom.
Printed on the bottom.
Do
Do not turn upside down.
Oh man, that's pretty funny.
Okay. Now this one kind of bread pudding here says product will be hot after
eating. You hope so. Certainly hope so. Certainly wouldn't want it to be cold after heating. That would be a disappointment.
Yeah, it says on the packaging for a Rowena iron, do not iron clothes on body.
Oh my god. You really need to. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Then on this Boots Children Cough Medicine says, do not drive a car or operate machinery after taking this medication. And the comment says, we could do a lot to reduce the rate of construction accidents if we could just get those 5-year-olds with head colds off the forklift.
Really, do not drive a car. You're taking this medicine, exactly. Oh my god, that's funny.
on Nital sleep aid, it says, warning, may cause drowsiness.
Yeah.
Well, what do you,
exactly. You hope so, right? Is it just a suggestion?
Yeah, then it says most brands of Christmas lights for indoor or outdoor use only.
Okay. Right, as opposed to what?
Yeah, really. I mean, if it's not indoor or outdoor, where are we? On the moon?
I'm not quite sure what the other options would be.
So the astronauts don't take any of this stuff into space.
Yeah, good heavens.
On a Japanese food processor, not to be used for other use. What?
Food for the other use.
Yeah,
What is that?
Drive it to town?
A Japanese food processor, not to be used for the other use. Okay. I'm still trying to figure out what that could be, but if any of our viewers have any thoughts on that, put it in the comment section.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah, I'm really kind of lost on that.
And on Sainsbury peanuts, it says warning, contains nuts.
Yeah, it's definitely a newsflash.
Okay, here's the one that makes any sense. On American Airlines pack of nuts, it says instructions: open packet, eat nuts. There you go. That makes
Fly
sense.
Delta. That's funny.
Yeah, it says on the child's Superman costume, wearing this garment does not enable you to fly.
Oh my God, really? It said that? Yeah, I'm sure the child who's wearing it can read that too.
This next one here, this is really an important one. It says on the Swedish chainsaw, do not attempt to stop chain with your hands or genitals.
What is a Swedish chainsaw? Is it different than a regular one? Is it like a vacuum or something? I mean, why would anyone even think of using their genitals to stop a chainsaw? That's pretty funny. Maybe it's more like I don't know. Okay, so was this really happening? Yeah, look at the comment. Was this really happening somewhere that they had to put that on? Yeah, so look, there's one, I saw one on Facebook where it was a tag inside the clothing, inside someone's shirt or, some piece of clothing. It says, remove before washing. So really, you gotta jump in there with it. Remove before washing. That's pretty funny.
Good idea.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Winston. Thanks for cheering us up on this Friday. I needed it.
Yeah, it's a kind of a strange thing. First off, on labels, they just have a small area to put a warning, and so they can't put that many words on there. So I guess somebody said, well, let's just put something on there. So they put some of that stuff on there, which seems kind of silly in retrospect, but Who knows?
Well, you know how important notice is, Winston. You never
Well, you
they
you
gave
you remember
notice.
you remember that one article we had, where it said that it took 26,000 words to describe the selling of cabbage.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
That was a
there's
while
government
ago.
regulations. They got to put some kind of warning on there. So don't try to stop the chain with your hands and your genitals. I mean, that
Oh
makes
my,
some sense.
oh my goodness. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. I mean,
Oh
that is the
yeah,
first thing I think of. If I can't stop something, you try your genitals. I mean, of
yeah,
course.
oh, really, yeah.
Really, that is the first. Can you imagine even, someone that they have to put that on there? It must have been happening a lot.
I guess I don't know.
Wow.
Or
Okay.
maybe somebody just trying to be a smart aleck.
Yeah, that's funny.
Of course, if it came from Sweden, then they may have used the wrong word. So maybe it translated into English, a little
Oh,
bit different than it would. Who knows? But anyway, it's still kind of funny. You see that kind of silliness.
oh, absolutely. No, translation errors can be quite funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Winston. I
yeah,
definitely I
a little
needed
bit of
a good
cheering up.
laugh. I needed a good laugh. Yeah.
Yeah, we all need a good laugh every once in a while. Kind of get things going. Like I said, we've had uh, I was talking to my friend James the other day. He had mentioned to me that Mother Mary was quite active here recently, and so it's kind of interesting. At one time, Mother Mary had come on the ranch, and they had somebody there with some kind of special camera or something, and they asked her if she would become more defined so they could take a picture of her,
Hmm.
and she did. And so they actually took a photograph of Mother Mary, and then it's kind of interesting. James has a large photograph hanging up on one of the walls of his assembly building there. So the first time I looked at that picture, it kind of set me back. I thought, wow. I said, James, look at this. This picture is moving. Now this is a still photograph hanging on the wall, and it moves. You can see it. If you sit there and look at it, you can see it.
Hmm.
You can see her image actually moving. And I think that may be on his website. He may have that photograph on there. But anyway,
Hmm.
Mary has had quite a bit to do with a lot of things that have been going on. She's still here. Now we're going to go into a little bit later on. We're going to go into uh, her history because like we said last time, we were talking about Maldek and the Luciferian Rebellion and all that stuff. Actually, Mary started out, at least as far as the history we have. I mean, the first incident we have of this entity known as, we call her Mother Mary today, but the first incident of her actually showing up was actually on the Malbec. And then we get into the rest. So we'll get into that a little bit later because it's very, very interesting. But in any event, whenever she comes around me, I just start laughing. She and I got a running joke going. Uh, but anyway, so when she comes around, I just start chuckling, because she has that, to me anyway, she has that, friendly, uh, you know, uh, feeling. So every time she comes around, every once in a while she comes around, and I had that same experience with that Ascendant Master called Baba G. He used to come to the ranch quite a bit, when we have meetings up there and stuff. And every time he comes around, I just start laughing. I mean, me and him got a running joke going too. So even with these sacred and holy things we got going on, there's still humor. There's still humor there. They like a good laugh just as much as we do. So everybody should be encouraged by that. Anyway, today's a special day. You may not know it, but today being April the 6th, I want to tell people something that they might not know. April the 6th is actually the birthday of Jesus.
Whoa.
Yeah. No, it's not December the 25th. People go on and on about Christ Mass, about being the birth of Christ or Jesus. It's just simply not so. technically the December the 25th was actually the birth date of Nimrod. You can go back in history and read about Nimrod.
Uh-oh. Mm-mm.
But anyway, today, April the 6th, is the birth date of Jesus. So happy birthday to Jesus. Everybody appreciates everything you've done and are doing for us. So we should appreciate that on this day right here. I think it was either the Incas or the Mayans in their history and stuff like that. They always considered anyone who was born on April the 6th to be a god. As it turns out, one of my children was born on April the 6th. But I'm not really sure about that kid being a god. Although there was a very significant event happened when he was born, which will lead into what I wanted to bring up here on this first, and that was he was stillborn, and so we had to work for a long time to get him back around, and so he's a strapping young man now. He's about 6'3", good sized fellow, but he didn't start out that way. We had to work pretty hard with CPR and blessings to get him to come around. And so April the 6th to me is significant in several ways. Now, one of the things I wanted to bring up, we had talked about, this concept of the divine or feminine. And we're trying to encourage the female population to come into their own, to take power. And I've been an advocate of this for a good while. Years ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, but some years ago, I had been doing, a little, I was fairly successful with healing. Touch and different things. And so I had, a little bit of a reputation. So anyway, one day my wife came to me and said, well, so-and-so over here has fallen ill and they would like for you to come, and to work on her. And I said, well, who is, is a female friend. So I told my wife, I said, well, why are you asking me for this? I said, go and gather up, 3 or 4 more of your lady friends, and you go and heal her. Because you remember we talked about the other day where Amora, in her book Pleiadian Perspectives, had said that the mother had given her daughters the fullness of the priesthood. It's theirs, and not by ordination either. They don't have to be ordained.
Right.
And so, in essence, what I was telling my wife was, well, act in your power.
Mm-hmm.
I said, gather up, 3 or 4 more lady friends, and I said, and go minister to her. And they did, and she recovered. And so I was wanting to impress upon the ladies that you have an inherent power. And so what my encouragement is to use it. Start to step forward in these matters. And I believe that you'll be highly successful. Now, I want to refer again to, the book that we had talked about in the past, because this one particular case that he was working with was, in fact, a lady who was involved in healing, as a soul. And she had talked about 2 methods that she was able to utilize. And one, she said, was kind of like a quick fix, or like drilling out a cavity by a dentist. But the other one was took a little bit longer, and it had a more lasting effect. And so then, so let me just read again this, because this will give a key. This will give a key for this healing, that I'm encouraging the women to do. So this is Dr. Newton, and this soul he's talking to is called Purian. I always call her Pure. Okay, so Newton says, okay, Pure, remember that you're explaining to me how you use your spiritual training and earthly training in combination to heal energy. You have the memory right now of both aspects. Tell me about the slow method. So she said, my eyes and kind of go into a semi-trance when I cup my hands near my patient's head. I see now that what I have learned in the spirit world helps me more than what I learned in my classes down here. I guess that doesn't matter really. So Newton says, we receive power to help others from many sources. Please go on about your healing by the slow method with your patients on earth. So this lady says, well, she says, I work with geometric shapes, such as spirals of energy, forming them in my mind to match the configuration of the particular trouble spot. Then I lay these energy structures around the gray areas. This sets up the areas to be repaired with my slow healing vibrations, like placing a hot pad on a sore muscle. You see, these souls are damaged on the way in, so forth and so on. Okay, so in essence, the point I wanted to bring out, and certainly as I'm encouraging the ladies to step forward in your power, to be healers. You know, you don't have to go to school. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. You inherently have this power, and it would be common to place your hands near the crown chakra, because the palms of your hands generate and project energy. And so for those that, you have sick children, you have sick neighbors, even sick husbands or whatever, wouldn't it be good to develop this ability like this one lady was talking about here? What she did, she projected a geometric pattern that would cause the affected area to heal. Now, when we go to administer in the physical world to someone who's ill, has some kind of problem, in some cases you might want to place your hands on the affected area. That works, but generally speaking, it would be good to place the hands, palm down over the crown chakra to insert the energy for healing, so that the energy can flow through the body and push out the negativity or whatever thing's happening. So again, going back to the concept of faith, like we had talked about on that Scott interview, these things can be done with faith. I had read some stories in early pioneer times of women healers who would, go to the sick and administer to them once. If that didn't work, they do it again. And it might take 2 or 3 applications to actually get the results you're looking for. But I'm encouraging, because again of the restoration of the divine feminine on the planet. I'm suggesting that you have this power inherently.
It's like
It'll take a little bit of practice. It'll take a little bit of work on your part. You have to demonstrate faith. But until you step forward in your power, your development is seriously retarded. So that was my point. Trying to, like I say, we talk about the restoration of the divine feminine and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, what can you do with it? Well, here's one thing that you can do. Here's something that you can develop. The power, the energy is inherent within you. Mother has ordained you to that purpose.
It's like we're endowed. It's an endowment, wouldn't
Yes,
you
it
say?
is.
Yeah.
It's an endowment of power. Now, in connection with that, I wanted to go back on the Maintenant archives in some areas. There's one thing in particular I wanted to point out. So let me just screen share. Now we're going to go to volume 1. Again, this is the Maintenant record. This is volume 1, which you can go on the internet. And last I looked, you can download volume 1 for free. And so anyway, this one here, you can look at to see if you'd like to continue on with it. Anyway, the first incident that they bring up with the Maintenant records is this character known as Hagoth. Now, Hagoth was an interesting character. He's mentioned in the Book of Mormon. The period of time that we're talking about here is about, like, say, 55 or 56 years BC. So this is before the advent of Jesus on the planet. And so this Hagoth was actually a merchant type shipper. And so he was doing commerce up and down the west coast, basically of Central America. One of the problems they had was they did not have very good navigation. And so when they would do commerce up and down the coast, they would always keep in sight of land, because apparently they had not figured out what a compass was yet. And they didn't know how to navigate by the stars, so forth and so on. So in any event, this Hagoth was, doing commerce, about 55 years, BC. And so this is technically where the story in the Maintenant archives starts. And you can reference Hagoth in the Book of Mormon along with about page, 358. For those who have a Book of Mormon. And if you ain't got one, go get one. It's an interesting book. I think people will be much pleased with the information in there. But in any event, so what had happened, first thing that Hagoth does was he he gives his history of who he is. He says, at this point, he's getting pretty old. He says, "Behold, I am Hagoth, I am waxed old. I write this book so that my generations may be kept, and so that the acts of my people may be recorded." He said, "I am that same Hagoth, the son of Hagmani, who was born a companion of Moroni." And these are characters you'll find in the Book of Mormon. "And followed him in war and peace. And it was my father, who was the builder of walls and battlements, who assisted Moroni in subduing the enemies of the Nephites, and in securing our lands and our religion and our freedom. The same was my father, and he descended from Zoram, who took the eldest of the daughters of Ishmael to wife." Now, this refers back again to the opening of the Book of Mormon. So he's going back on the genealogy. "And also from Jacob, the brother of Nephi, whose father took his journey into the wilderness from Jerusalem when Zedekiah was king." And then he goes a little bit further. He starts to talk about this one character known as Mulek. And this Mulek was one of the sons of King Zedekiah. Now, I've on some of our comments and some of the emails I get, I do get emails from Ireland, and they're it's kind of fun. Some of the things we bring up go into Irish history. And so I wanted to also, for those who don't know some of that history, I'll just, bring that up, because when Zedekiah was king, that's during the days of Jeremiah, the prophet. And I think Jeremiah was a maternal grandfather, or he was the father of whoever the lady was that was married to Zedekiah. So he, as a grandfather, once he saw what was happening in the kingdom there, because of the Babylonians and stuff, he took two of the daughters, two of his granddaughters from Jerusalem, and first they went into Egypt, for protection under Pharaoh Necho II, who shows up later on. I think I referred to Necho II when we were talking about some of the things, about this Joseph Smith. But in any event, Necho, against the advice of Jeremiah, went to war, and so Jeremiah again was required to flee. Now, it is rumored that Jeremiah did in fact have the Ark of the Covenant and what's known as the Stone of Destiny with him. The Stone of Destiny historically was referred to when Jacob wrestled with the angel. He laid his head, on a stone, as it were, to sleep, where he had the, when he's asleep, he had the vision of the ladder and all that kind of thing. But anyway, apparently, the historical rumor is that Jeremiah had possession not only of the Ark of the Covenant, but also of the Stone of Destiny. And I think those in Ireland and those in Europe and so forth are very much aware of the history of the Stone of Destiny. But in any event, so Jeremiah left with these two daughters, granddaughters, and he first, they sailed out across the Mediterranean. At some point, they stopped in Spain. And the one granddaughter, they refer to her as Scota. However, that's a title; it's not a personal name. The other daughter, her name was Tia Taffy, and I think people in Ireland know that history very well. But in any event, they stopped first in Spain. What portion I can't say, although I might have an idea, which I'll go into in a moment. But in any event, Jeremiah did eventually end up in Ireland. This Tia Taffy married one of the prominent men in that area. Apparently, he was from the tribe of Ephraim. And then, of course, Tia Taffy would have been from the tribe of Judah. So you have the combination of Judah and Ephraim being joined together, which plays well into the story down the line about the three queens, Tia Taffy, Mary Queen of Scots, and Queen Victoria. So I think maybe the Americans or the people in the United States might not know a lot of that history, but the people in Europe do. People in Europe, especially the ones in Ireland, they know that history. So I just want to make reference to it. But I wanted to bring in one more element in Irish history that many might not know, and that is that there's an individual known as Gathalas. Now, Gathalas was a Greek, and he had done a few things, and then finally he eventually ended up in Egypt at the same time as Moses. He fought with Moses in the Ethiopian Wars, so I guess they were drinking buddies or whatever. But anyway, at the same time that Moses left Egypt on the Exodus, Gathalas left Egypt also, and he had married into the royal families there. So Gathalas, he left Egypt, and eventually he ended up in Spain. Now, the particular part of Spain that he ended up in is now called Portugal, or in other words, Port of Gathalas. That's the history of Portugal. It was actually founded by this Greek who had been in Egypt fighting, working with Moses. He sailed out of there. He ended up in Spain in the area we now call Portugal, which comes from the concept of Port of Gathalas. Now, at some point, Gathalas decided that he would cross over to Ireland. And he had quite a history there. Matter of fact, anytime you see, the words gal, like Galway or, this all is talking about Gathalas. And so we have that history. So our Irish friends that listen to this, I thought I'd just throw in a little bit more about a little bit of that history there to help, give a little bit of an idea what's going on in the past, which might be helpful. In any event, this you see how some of these things connect all over the planet. I mean, we got we got Jeremiah leaving, going to Ireland. We got Gathalus, leaving Egypt, going over to Ireland eventually. You got Moses, and all these things, and they all interconnect. Is what my point is. So it gives us a little bit of continuity. All right. Now, this history and story about Haygoth is quite interesting, because when you get what had happened was they decided to move a little bit further north, and so again, hugging the coastline, they went up into the Sea of Cortez, and they found the river, and so that would be the Colorado River. That's what we historically call the Colorado, because the Colorado dumps into the Sea of Cortez down there. Anyway, it just says here, and it came to pass that we kept the land in sight, lest we become lost in the sea. Because again, they didn't know how to navigate. They didn't have compasses. They didn't know how to navigate properly. Why they wouldn't after all that time, I don't know. But anyway, they couldn't. So it says that we keep land in sight, lest we become lost in the sea. And we came to a place where there was a land on the right hand, and the land afar off on the left hand for many days. So they're coming right up through the the Sea of Cortez. They got Baja, Mexico on one side, then they got Mexico as it is now on the other side. This guy is perfectly describing the geography that we still have today. So anyway, they got land on the right, they got land on the left, and we traveled between the shores until we came together at the mouth of the great river, of which I had been told and which I had spoken. So then he talks about journeying up the river.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you go far enough up the river, what are you going to come into? Well, he goes on to describe. It says, therefore, I and 12 of my brethren took our families and our provisions, and we made our expedition into the land northward. Behold, we traveled a long way, and the land was for many days barren. I mean, if you go up the Colorado River, what are you going to see?
Not much.
Yeah. He said, behold, we traveled a long way, and the land was for many days barren, and we found a few streams that emptied into the river. Therefore, it continued strange to us that so great a river should pass through such dry land. And then we came to a place where the river had carved out great canyons and precipices. That's a Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
They were going right up through the Grand Canyon. Anyway, it's a great canyons and precipices, even so much that the walls thereof surpassed by many times the height of the temples of the Nephites. Yea, so exceedingly tall were they in some places that even our strongest men could not climb to the tops thereof. So he's perfectly describing the Grand Canyon there.
Sure.
Anyway, then they go on through the description of where they ended up. They went up to Colorado. Eventually, they migrated basically over into the Four Corners area.
Right.
And then from there, they sent out 2 other settlements. I think some of them went maybe up into northern Colorado, maybe over into the Uintas, over into Utah. And then I forgot where the other group went. But anyway, they're describing geography that we're very, very familiar with.
Right.
I mean, I was down in the Southwest for a long time. So, yeah, I know exactly where he's talking about when he starts describing some of these places. Now, I want to go a little bit further because, again, the story starts out in approximately 55 BC, and then eventually this Haygoth dies, and his children and so forth have other experiences. And so one of the things that popped out that I thought was very interesting, which again, going back with the divine feminine that we're trying to portray here, I said, but verily, anyway, he's talking about their teachers and, how they were trying to govern themselves and stuff. That says, for not long after we laid the foundation of the city of Haygoth, the people cried with one voice to make me their king, and I would not. Yea, the people wanted governance and a king, but I declared to them my thoughts and beliefs, for I remembered the words of King Mosiah, that if it were possible that all men were righteous, then it would follow that kings would always rule their people with righteousness. But Mosiah taught rightly that the people should choose judges. And in this shall the rights of the people always be protected. Now we have seen how even those chosen by the people to be judges might become unjust if the people fell into wickedness. Wherefore, we chose and designated our wives as those who would elect the judges, and that no action would be decided by one judge, but by a council of judges. In this way, if the judges became unjust, it was only because the whole people had fallen into wickedness. For our wives have always been more meek and more naturally prone to righteousness than our men. So on this particular occasion here, these people, when they decided they needed some kind of form of government, they called on the wives and said, "Look, you pick who's going to be a governor." Because again, men, how we act and everything like that. So they were very wise. They were very wise in that decision. So it was the wives that all got together, the feminine side of the equation. They got together and said, "Okay, we're going to have so and so to be a judge." And it doesn't say whether the judges were men or women, but they were chosen to that position by those who had proven themselves as wives. So I thought this is a little bit of interesting history. And then there's some more things that go on in this first book that you'll find interesting, but I wanted to get down to, let me see, make this go a little bit faster here.
Very interesting. A lot of native cultures are the same way, where the women are the ones who you really, I guess would say have the have the greatest prudence in decisions.
Yeah. Now this, we get a little bit further in in years here. They're talking about the ability to heal, the healing gifts. When somebody's sick. Now, this particular description here is a particular people among these other people. These are called the Ammonites. And they had quite a history in the Book of Mormon people can read about. Anyway, he says, now when they were, among this people, the Ammonites, he says, when they were sick or afflicted among the people, their loved ones bring them unto the holy guy, or they call him Pele, and also unto those women blessed with the healing gifts. And they pray together. And then it goes into, well, I don't want to read all this. I'm trying to get to the, they talk about how, how they're using medicine and herbs and all, because they didn't have a drugstore back in those days. I mean, they had to make up, whatever they're using. But I wanted to get to the Council of Mothers. It says when a woman comes of childbearing age, she becomes part of the governing council among the people of Ammon, even that council which elects the rulers and other councils of the people. Behold, this duty and responsibility is conferred upon the women in a sacred manner, and this is the manner in which it's done. It says the young woman, after she has received a new name from the Pele or holy man, is brought by her mother and all her female kin before the women of the community, and she is seated in the center with all the other women seated in circles around her. When all the women are seated, the woman who has been elected to speak for the council of the mothers stands and declares the intent and purpose of the meeting. Then she claps her hands above her head 3 times and clearly pronounces the name of the young woman. when she has done this, she and the young woman both clap their hands. Anyway, they're talking about the little ceremony that they're
Okay.
doing here
Mhm.
of a young female who is becoming of childbearing age, which means that she'll be in a position to find a husband or a mate. And then the rest, going through some of the things, and it talks about courting principles, how they court,
Mhm.
and the young man who's interested in the young lady first goes to her mother and asks, how can I gain the favor of your daughter? Can you give me a few tips or clues? So the mother participated in it. If she is favorable of the young man, if she's not favorable, she just tell him to take a hike.
Right.
But if she's favorable of the union,
Okay.
then she would give the young man tips, about how to court and how to impress the young lady so that she would want to marry him. And then after that, the young man would go to the father for further conversations about how do you think, this is going to work out and this, that, and the other. So again, their practice of courting was entirely different than how we do it today. I tried to tell my young people, when the question of, finding a husband or a wife came up, I said, look, you should, you, you should approach it spiritually first. And that is ask God who you ought to marry
Mm.
and then fall in love with that one. I said, don't fall in love first and then get married. I said, find out who you should marry and then fall in love with that one. You see, because people have a tendency to do it backwards. Now, for the most part, kids didn't pay attention like they normally do. But I'm just saying, if we were to proceed purposefully in our relations with marriage, husbands and wives, and all these kind of things, there's perhaps just a little bit better way that the young people could approach these things, so that we would have much more successful families. That's my point. And so that's kind of what here's in this particular section here. Do you have any questions so far? Because I'm going to break off of this and go on to something else here.
No, I think you make a very good point. It's wonderful that you bring this up because this is missing in our society because the divine feminine has been suppressed and repressed and oppressed in our society, and it needs to come back. It needs to make a return so we can have balance, a balance of energy on the planet. So I think that women do need to understand that they are far more, and they don't need to rely on the approval of a man in order to feel that they are empowered. And so this is a really lovely message for women particularly, but
Yeah,
for men too, because they don't need to feel threatened just because a woman, um, you know, you know, acknowledges her power, that she's endowed with. You know what I mean?
yeah. See, this goes back to the allegory. Remember how we started that allegory at, about a couple of times ago, where mother and father God was contemplating what to do. And so the father was kind of the guy that went out, shoveled the dirt, built the houses, planted the gardens, all that kind of stuff. But it was the mother who gave life to the universe. And she bestowed that ability as an endowment upon her daughters. And so, my implication that I started out with today was, we've talked, a little bit in times past about the restoration of the divine feminine, but that don't tell anybody what to do about it. And so we have, at least one suggestion that I'm making here today is how, because of the divine feminine, because of the endowment of power, that you could start to practice and learn how to do healing. And I mean, certainly, if you look in this Mentonal record, there's several of the successful healers, women healers. I mean, this one lady, she was renowned as a healer, but she was an expert with herbs. She knew exactly what was needed, for a particular ailment that people might have. Now, they lived in a pristine world. I mean, they didn't have pollution. They didn't have all this other crap that we're having to deal with. So So, ladies, you're going to have to do a whole lot more study, I think, because of the problems that we have today. But if you're talking about divine feminine restoration, all that kind of stuff, and coming into your power, learn how to do these things because the gift is within you. Like for instance, I was talking to my mother one time. My mother was a registered nurse, and she's a very good nurse. And she had a lot of controversies with the doctors. Well, first off, she was smarter than most of them. But anyway, I asked her one time. I said, as smart as you are, and because of the abilities you have, I said, why did you decide to be a nurse instead of a doctor? She said, because in my day, for a woman to be a doctor was a social no-no. You see? And so now we're starting to shift. We're starting to shift into a different thought process. And so, typically men, assume those roles as doctors or healers, as they claim, all these kind of things. But ladies, step into your power, move forward, at least in this one area. And there's other areas, but I'm just saying, step forward in your power, and this would be a good start for you. So I didn't want to leave people hanging about, what, oh dear, what can we do? That was kind of the thought
Right.
process that I was working on when I was trying to bring that up.
Oh, well, that's very good because I know that I actually know of other nurses who I think they're better at their, I would say they call themselves medical intuitives.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
they really have to, um, like they just know innately. I remember talking to one of these women, and she knew exactly what I needed. I went to her for consultation.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with her training as a nurse per se, because it wasn't what she relied on. There was some innate gift that she had. Now, because she was a nurse for so long, she had that to draw from as well. But she did, recount some stories to me where a doctor would make a diagnosis based on this allopathic medical system we have, and she just knew intuitively it was wrong. That wasn't what was
Yeah.
wrong,
Yeah.
that they weren't looking far enough, deep enough, they didn't ask the right questions. So it's very limited, this, and sadly this is what we have. But clearly there's more people that have uh,
Yeah.
innate gifts, as you're saying. Yes, they have to waken them up though, Winston. They have to
Well,
learn
that's what
how
we're
to
trying to
waken them.
do. We're trying
Yeah.
to suggest, here's some things you can start to do to develop that inherent ability that you were endowed with. And so, like I say, that time my wife come to me and said, well, so-and-so over here is sick. I said, well, gather up some of your lady friends and go minister to her. Be in your power. You don't need me. Be in your power, which they did.
Yeah.
Now, the old saying is that if you want to get well, go see a nurse. If you want to be sick, go see a doctor. And
Right.
that's very true because nurses are the ones who do the healing. And I ain't just talking about female nurses. There's a lot of male nurses too, to get into that
Right.
profession as healers. And, like my own mother told me as a nurse working in a general practice in the hospitals, she told me, she had saved 2 or 3 different lives from doctors.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
and listen, that's one woman you don't cross.
Right.
Because she'd go right straight to the medical board. She wasn't afraid of the doctor. She didn't care if they were doing something wrong. She'd go right straight to the medical board and put it on them. And she told me, some of the difference. She told me 2 or 3 different cases of people that she had saved their life when the doctor was fixing to kill them or let them die. So again, we have these things come up, and so we're encouraging. It's my encouragement, and 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 I'm sure Mother Mary will back me on this. That the ladies need to come forward and stand in their power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll see great things that come from it. So that's pretty much all I had on that.
I always have to say that there's, as there's all these wonderful, really good nurses out there too. Sadly, I happen to know of one who has been trained. She really, I think, wanted to be a doctor. So
Uh-huh.
she was way too in the logical mind and never really knew how to access that intuitive side, and
Yeah.
didn't really have that intuition. So not everybody has it, but but I think you have to be able to honor that. You have to acknowledge that you have it, possess it within yourself. You really have to acknowledge your spiritual side to do this, because I think
Yeah,
this is an example of someone who denied that spiritual side of themselves, and even as a nurse was not did not have that intuitive sense because she denied that spiritual side of her. I think you have to tune in to that spiritual side in order
yeah.
to be able to do that. Would you agree, Winston? Would you?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into another interesting historical uh, thing here. I wanted to bring up something. A lot of people might not be aware of this. In as much as we had talked about in one of our other reports about the new and everlasting covenant,
Right.
it plays in here. Uh, and that is uh, this thing that happened in Walker Lake, Nevada, when they had that huge gathering of native people, and Jesus came, and there was a reason for it. But anyway, the history of it goes right back to Joseph Smith himself as an ancillary subject on that, and that was at one time Joseph Smith had asked, Jesus when he'd see him again. And so the revelation that was given to him at that time said, Joseph, my son, if thou livest until thou art 85 years old, thou shalt see the face of the Son of Man. All right, so Joseph Smith was born in December the 23rd, which is quite an interesting thing in and of itself,
Mm-hmm.
in 1805. And so technically then, if 85 years, then, if he'd lived to be 85 years old, then it takes us down to 1890. Now, a lot of the Mormons, who knew this or knew about it, were looking forward to 1890.
Hmm.
But in the meantime, the church as a whole had renounced the new and everlasting covenant. So Jesus was not going to come to the Mormons in 1890 because they had rejected,
Hmm.
just like Lucifer had done. They had rejected the new and everlasting covenant by 1890, which caused a great deal of problems. I don't need to go into all that.
Hmm.
But anyway, in the local newspapers in 1890, the newspapers of the whole country carried many stories of the event during 1890, including the Deseret News. They called it the Messiah craze among the Indians.
Hmm.
Nevertheless, it received wide attention in the nation's press because of the Indian problems it created. The Indians were so agitated on at least 16 tribal reservations that General Miles of the U.S. Army found it necessary to make a tour of all Army installations in and near these reservations to see what could be done about all this agitation over an Indian Messiah. All right. So then, this so-called Messiah craze had become the inspiration for Chief Sitting Bull. Now, Sitting Bull wasn't at Walker Lake, apparently. But he got the word, he got the news of it. Then he wanted to start going doing the ghost dance.
Hmm.
By the way, Chief Sitting Bull is one of my spirit guides. He's always around. Him and another native lady named Layla. So I've got, actually, I got 12 spirit guides,
Wow.
and Sitting Bull is one of them. And this native lady, beautiful lady named Layla. So anyway, so I get a little bit of extra help sometimes with some knowledge and things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the Messiah craze had become the inspiration for Chief Sitting Bull to believe that he could arouse the Indians to another victory greater than the destruction of Custer's at Little Bighorn, for the Messiah had promised them that the whites should be destroyed from off this land, and the land would be given back to the Indians, for whom the whites had so unfairly taken it and had broken so many treaties concerning payment for it. In fact, certain government agents found it necessary to have Chief Sitting Bull accidentally killed. It wasn't an accident at all; they murdered him.
Mm-hmm.
in a brutal fashion. But anyway, so there's I don't, unless you were actually inside of some of these situations, we just see the reports that came out in the newspaper about what had happened, and I don't think that they're actually reporting it, as it were. Okay, so they go on with this. It says several small parties of Indians have gone from their tribes to some point in Nevada. There they have been shown somebody disguised as Messiah. So this is a white man report.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so they're claiming somebody who is disguised as the Messiah, uh, appeared to him and all that kind of stuff. And so then this General Miles, he got it in his brain that it was the Mormons that was stirring all this up.
Oh, geez.
And I can certify that it wasn't. There were some of the Mormon people that were actually at Walker Lake when this happened.
Mm.
And I know who some of those are. And I don't think I want to comment on that particular thing. I'd have to give a lot of history as to give the reason why those particular men were there.
Mm.
Anyway, so these are the newspaper reports, that the white men are reporting. And so then they go on about the problem with this and that. And anyway, I wanted to. Okay, so General Miles had received from the Post adjutant at Fort Custer, Montana, a report of Lieutenant Robertson, who carefully investigated the new religious craze at the Cheyenne Agency. His talks were principally with Porcupine, apostle of the new religion among the Cheyenne, and with Big Beaver, who accompanied Porcupine on his visit to the new Christ at Walker Lake, Nevada. Porcupine told him that there were several hundred Indians at Walker Lake at the time, including representatives of the Cheyenne, the Sioux, Arapaho, Groventries, Utes, Navajos, Bannocks, and other strange tribes. Some were white from a far distance that he did not know. Now, those white Indians, as they call them, probably came from Yucatan.
Oh.
Yeah, they're tribes. There are still. I had a friend of mine went down there and looked. He met with them. Anyway, they're actually Welsh. They're not, they're not from the Book of Mormon people at all.
Mm.
But they are native to Yucatan. Have been there since about, I think, 700 BC. They came with a man named Madoc. Anyway, anyway, I think what he's referring to here was these Indians that came who were white. I think they were from Yucatan. I wasn't there, so I don't know. I'm just saying what I think. Anyway, they talk about a sermon. This eyewitness now talks. It tells how a very righteous young Indian by the name of Porcupine from the Cheyenne was, like certain wise men of the East, inspired to take this long pilgrimage to Walker Lake, Nevada, to see the Messiah. He was accompanied by his wife and two other Indians, and like the wise men of the East, they were very content with the high reward of their journey, for they had seen the Christ. It was possibly in the vicinity of Walker Lake or Pyramid Lake in Nevada. It was in the mountains where Porcupine found himself with many strange Indians whose languages he could not speak, and who, like himself, had come from afar off, but all had come to see the Christ. At sundown, the Indians collected in large numbers, and after it became dark, he appeared to them, a large fire being built to throw the light on him. He was not as dark as an Indian, nor as light as a white man, and his dress was partly like each. He sat for a long time in perfect silence with his head bowed, during which time the Indians never moved or spoke. They were told that if they even whispered, the Christ would know it and be displeased. After a time, he raised his head, and then Porcupine saw that he was fair to look upon, that his face had no beard
Mhm.
and was youthful, and that his bright hair extended to his waist. That's
Hmm.
my computer goes goofy sometimes. Uh,
Interesting. Is this
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 is now
is
this is Porcupine, who's a Cheyenne. This is his report.
okay.
All right. So Porcupine had heard that the Christ of the white men had been nailed to the cross, and looking, he was able to see the scars of the nails in the hands of the Indians' Christ when he raised them. In his feet, he could not see the marks of the nails by reason of the moccasins, but he was told they were there, and that in his side were spear marks, which were
Mhm.
concealed by the shirt he wore. Porcupine was told that his own coming had, with 11 others, been foretold by the Christ who had sent for them, and that was why he had involuntarily taken the long journey. The Christ spoke to them and took Porcupine by the hand and told them that they were all his children. He talked to them until it was day, telling them that he had made them and all the things around them, that in the beginning God had made the earth, and after a time had sent him on the earth to teach the people what was right.
Mm,
But the people were afraid of him, and this is what they did to me, showing the scars.
mm,
He said when he found that the children were bad, he went back above and promised to return after many hundred years. Now, see, if you go back into the book of Mormon, if you go back into Mendenhall records, they do have the records or the occasion when Jesus appeared to the people after his resurrection and ascension.
right.
And so as the people devolved into darkness, then he simply left. But now he said he's coming back, and he had a particular reason for it.
Mm,
Uh, so now the time was up, and God told him the earth was old and worn out, and had sent him again to renew it and make things better. He said that all the dead were to be resurrected and brought back to life on this earth, which was too small to hold them all, but he would do away with heaven and make the earth large enough to hold them all. He spoke about fighting, that it was bad,
right.
and the Indians must not do it anymore.
Hmm.
That the earth hereafter was to be all good, and everybody must love one another. See, he's not promoting. I mean, those who took that report, and got the reservations all stirred up, were telling falsehoods and lies.
Right.
That's not what Jesus told them.
Mm-mm.
He said he would send among them those who could heal wounds and cure the sick by laying on of hands, and that the good would live here forever, and the buffalo would come back. He said it was wrong to kill men of any kind, that if any man disobeyed these teachings, he would be banished from the face of the earth, that the Indians must believe all that he now told them, and not say that he lied, for he would know their thoughts no matter what part of the world they were in, and they could not expect to deceive him. Among those whom Porcupine saw were some who seemed like white men, but they all seemed good, and all listened and believed what the Christ said to them. Now, there were some white men from Utah that came there. I have a name of a few of them, but there's also these white uh, Indians from Yucatan. Anyway, it says during Porcupine's stay of many days, the Christ several times repeated these talks and told the Indians that they must return, that when they return to their people, they must tell them all these things. But he was not all the time visible and could disappear at will. Here, he is here among us tonight and knows all what you're talking about, said Porcupine. I am sorry to say there are one or two Cheyennes who do not believe what I have said. I wish these and some of you would go back with me and see what I've spoken, see that I have spoken the truth. When you have seen the Christ once, you can see him in your sleep. That is, if you have shaken his hand, and through him you can go to heaven and see your friends who are dead. I see him often in my sleep, and he told me there was trouble for the Cheyennes. the next night he came to me and told me that all would be well in the end.
In the end. That's
Yeah.
always an interesting
Now,
story.
in other articles and other places on the internet, you can also find, what instructions were given, because Porcupine apparently was singled out as being a very holy man, and they chose 12 others. I mean, they chose 12
Mm,
pretty much in the same respect that Jesus had chosen 12 apostles,
mhm,
when he was in Jerusalem. So this number 12 keeps coming up. And then some of the instructions and so forth, initiations and so forth that were given, were given at that time. He also taught them certain dances that he wanted them to do. I'm not sure the ghost dance was among that. It may have been, but if it was, it certainly got corrupted after it left there. But a lot of people don't realize what's called the early Christians. And of course, they weren't Christians back then. They were followers of the way, the disciples of Jesus. They danced also. There were certain dances they would do to create a rhythm, to create the vibrations, to get into a particular, spiritual mood. So anyway, that's a pretty good, interesting article there. Like I say, if people want to study some of the other information, if you just go onto the internet and just type in, Walker Lake or Pyramid Lake, Indian Messiah, there's a lot of good articles on the internet, about that particular occasion. Now, what has happened since then, I can't say, because I simply don't know. How successful was Porcupine? How successful were the 12?
mm.
Are they still have they perpetuated that quorum? And all these kind of things. I don't have the answers to any of these things, with the exception that I do know that I think they came out of Central America. It may have been the Mayans. There may have been some other tribes of people that had come all the way up into, I think in the 30s. They come up to Salt Lake City to ask the leaders of the church, was it time to go back and build New Jerusalem yet?
Mm.
And the answer was, we don't know.
Hmm.
They came back in the 70s. I think it was somewhere around 1970 or 75. Another group of them came back up to inquire about going back and building New Jerusalem. And they were told the same thing, from the LDS church leaders. They said, we don't know. And they were telling the truth. They got no idea.
Hmm.
But like I say, I did talk to that one fellow from up on the Ute reservation, up there with all that, like I told you in the past, where white men just don't go without invitation.
Oh, yes, you mentioned that.
So anyway, I talked to him one time, and he told me that he had eyes on uh, all the gold and all the jewels that would adorn the temple at the New Jerusalem. They got them stockpiled. They got them on carts or whatever, trailers, whatever, ready to go as soon as they're called for.
Hmm.
And so, there's a certain undertow of knowledge and happenings and preparations among the native people, specifically in North America, in regards to, some of these things that have been prophesied, even way back in the King James Version of the Holy Bible and so forth. So we're looking for these things to happen. Will they happen in my lifetime? I don't know.
Hmm.
But the preparations have been made, and things are on course. And so again, like I say, we need to make better friends, with our native peoples. There's things going on, there's not, they just don't tell about. Like I say, if I hadn't talked to this fella about the gold jewels and stuff, I would have never heard that story. Now I'm broadcasting it.
Right.
And so my recommendation is that make better friends.
Make better friends.
Make better friends with some of your native fellows and so forth. You know, it's interesting. You know, when Joseph Smith himself first organized that church in 1830, the first ones he went out to seeking was the Indian population. He went to the Delawares and all those people in that area. He was looking for them because there were certain things, certain knowledge and stuff, you know, that they had that he wanted to have, you know, to do with. And so, you know, there's something there. There's something there. Like I say, like I've got Sitting Bull, you know, sitting on my shoulder now. Can you see him? Anyway, Sitting Bull here, he's poking me and saying, okay, tell me some of these things. So that's why I'm opening it up. I'm opening up some of these things because I'm being prompted to. My spirit guide saying, hey, Winston, tell him this stuff, you know. So anyway, Sitting Bull, he gets after me every once in a while. So, and I appreciate it. I appreciate that help. All right. Well, I just wanted to bring that up to put the, you know, again, tying together loose ends and trying to, you know, some of the things we've talked about for the last few times of a spiritual nature. I'm trying to tie some things together of a practical nature that might be helpful. All right, so I want to make sure I have time for this last. Anyway,
There's time.
I'll have time for this. Yeah, but I want to go back into the Palladian perspective again because I want to give the history of Mother Mary. So let's see.
As Winston and I were talking before we started recording, that there just isn't enough information on the origin, the past lives, I should say, of Jesus. So, but we seem to have, Winston will be sharing with our viewers some background on Mother Mary, which is very interesting.
Yeah, why can't I see it?
I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Okay, what I've shared here is again from that book I referred to by Moore Kuan Yin called Pleiadian Perspectives. Now we're on, for those of you that have the book, we're on page 60. And this is talking about an entity known as Ma-Ra, or as we would pronounce it, Mary or Mary.
Ah.
This is the origin, as far as we know. Or this is one time reference to the entity that we've come to know as Mother Mary, who was at Jerusalem, the mother of Jesus, and who is working closely with us right now. Okay? As it turned out, this I'll you know, instead of saying Ma-Ra, I'm just going to say Mary. That's how I say it. Anyway, so Mary actually started out on the Maldek. Now you remember last time we had talked about the Luciferian rebellion,
right?
And about Maldek, you know, finally blowing up and all the different things that went on. Anyway, so it says here that Mary saw herself as a priestess in the temples of Melchizedek on Maldek, being initiated in the ceremony of divine sovereignty. This was a spiritual rite of passage given to those who had attained the level of spiritual purity and wisdom that enabled them to be responsible and accountable for living as spiritual authorities unto themselves and others. It was also a recognition that the initiate was in direct contact with his or her higher self. Now, wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, Mary saw herself being dressed in a white robe for her initiation and led to and placed in a shallow human-sized stone bath. The bath was spring-fed from below its rock-lined bottom and considered very sacred. As the water covered her body, she had felt the sharp bolt of electrical light pierce her third chakra. That would be, the third chakra would be what? Throat?
Oh, third? It starts at the bottom, so it would be your.
No, start at the top.
Oh, starts at the top? Yeah. Well, one, two, three, throat.
Yeah. So she had breathed deeply to release resistance to this piercing light as her whole body began to shake violently and to become less and less solid until all that was left was an etheric form of billions of points of sparkling light. As she witnessed her complete surrender to this transfiguration in her past Maldakian life, she simultaneously re-experienced it in her 20-year-old Earth body. And we're going to go into that. Her Ka was completely activated, connecting her higher self with her human form during this experience. All self-doubts and blocks on all levels were cleared like smoky vapors rising from and leaving her body. When her body became physical again, she was more than she had been. Her inner knowing of limitlessness, life beyond form, memories of her Maldakian enlightenment, and her own soul's origins and purpose were completely restored.
Hmm.
As the Maldakian past life initiation, vision, and re-experience were completed, Mary instantly became bigger than Mount Wabasi and found herself flying above the precession of her future lives. She saw pain and struggle, great love and compassion, deep wounding and separation, and eventually a life in which she would be reinitiated as a sovereign queen in Egypt around 10,000 BC. That lifetime would be the next one on earth during which she would experience total enlightenment and spiritual freedom. Next, she saw herself as an enlightened priestess of the mystery schools of Isis, called temples of Mara in Hebrew countries, giving birth to a special child who was named Jesus Christ. She saw herself taking him to the river one moon cycle after his birth and giving him a baptismal initiation as a divine sovereign being. This was the meaning of baptism in its origins and truth, a releasing of the initiate from all illusions and past ties, and an honoring of the person's spiritual awakeness, alignment with higher self, and ability to serve and act as a spiritually sovereign being.
Well, well, well. That's fascinating. Exactly how the church has completely adulterated this
Oh yeah,
and
it gets better.
bastardized it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it gets better yet.
All right. Can't wait.
Yeah. So Mary's love for, dedication to, and honoring of this tiny one brought ancient future tears of remembrance to her eyes. Now, this is a side comment by Amora. And to Amora's eyes as she channeled this material and saw the visions. So, this vision that Amora is having here is bringing tears to her eyes.
Mhm.
Mary wept even more as she watched him mature and saw herself taking him to Egypt to be initiated and taught in the pyramids. Now, what age that was, we're not quite sure. But he,
Taught in the pyramids.
you remember Joseph and Mary took Jesus into Egypt
That's
as a
right.
babe. Apparently, he was pretty smart even when he was a little kid. Anyway, she observed herself and her future 18-year-old son walking hand in hand on the back of crocodiles as if they were nothing more than stepping stones into the death chambers of a maze-like temple. They dropped hands and entered individual chambers where they were immediately put into deep sleep. For 3 days while asleep in these chambers, they faced all their worst fears and ego allurements.
Hmm.
if either had succumbed to any of these experiences, she or he would immediately die. Both emerged 4 days later and were quietly and secretly taken to the Great Pyramid for a final initiation ceremony before returning to their homeland. Okay, the visions faded again. She saw herself in the cities of light on Sirius, being prepared for her final service as an emissary of light on Earth. That's now.
Yeah. Serious.
Mary is here now.
Incarnated?
Nope. Well, James took a picture. I mean, I was telling you about that picture. You know, James and some of those fellas took of her,
Okay.
photographed of her.
Okay. Mm.
She saw even later versions of herself appearing in radiant light form to many people on Earth, and sometimes speaking to the people, and sometimes simply opening up their hearts. She saw the fall of the Catholic Church and Orthodox religions and wept again as she witnessed the return of sacredness to Earth and sovereignty to her people. That's what we're doing now, folks.
That's right. It's where we are.
That's what we're involved in here.
It's where we are. Exactly.
So the trials and tribulations that we pass through, you know, is somewhat memorable of the things that she and Jesus passed through, you know, when they were those 3 days in that, whichever one of those temples it was. I mean, whichever one of those pyramids it was. Anyway, she saw mass awakenings and the second coming of Christ in mass, during which she and her earth son and a host of other radiant ones held out their hands to welcome many thousands of beings into the higher dimensional cities of light.
Beautiful.
Once again, the visions faded, and she was simultaneously filled with and one with a great huge light that seemed to fill and connect her with all existence. Now that would be that light that's being referred to there is the golden white light which emits from source. You remember we've talked about this,
Right.
and all the people should be praying for the golden white light to completely infuse us. I do every night.
Right.
That's the last thought that I have.
Bring it on.
Yeah, it is please infuse me with that golden white light. Anyway, as she let go into this infinite sun, she was blended with the collective consciousness of all that is. That's an important phrase, folks. And she knew total peace and surrender. She surrendered to the light. All her ego was surrendered to the light. After a few minutes of Earth time, she found herself walking down a golden aisle of light toward two golden light thrones. Sitting on them were the two most radiant beings she had ever seen, one male and one female. As she approached them, she was filled with even more love and radiant light than before. The Holy Father, now go back again, refer to your allegory.
Mm-hmm.
The Holy Father and Holy Mother each extended a hand to her as she knelt before them. Then the Holy Father spoke to her, saying, "Daughter of darkness, you have returned to the light from whence you were conceived. You may remain here with us if you choose to do so, for you have no need to return to earth for yourself. You are complete now. But if you choose to do so, you may return to earth and step into the lives you saw flashing before you. If you choose this, you will first go to the sacred mountain and be trained in the ways of alchemy and transcendence of limitation. Then you will return to your people briefly and bring the sacred laws to them. This is only if you choose to go back. What would you have your own destiny to be, my child? So again, we're talking about free will here. Mary could have stayed where she was. She didn't need to come back and help us. She didn't. That was her choice. So as Mary looked deeply into the eyes of Holy Mother and Holy Father, tears of great love and contemplation flowed once more. Sorry, this story is bringing tears to my
Yeah, it's
eyes.
very emotional.
Softly, she responded, I cannot stay here with you while they remain on earth. My love for my own future on earth, all of it, and for earth's people and their lives, call me to return and fulfill my purpose there. The Holy Mother replied, my beautiful daughter, earth and her people will awaken with or without you. If it is your motherly pull and magnetism that pulls you to return, be honest about it. This last statement was intended to challenge Mary's sense of knowing versus her self-doubt about her own motivations. She sat in silence and contemplatively retreated inside for a few moments as she felt the truth of the words. Then she answered, Holy Mother, I am that I am. As she released her hands, consciousness slowly returned to her body on earth, where she still sat in the full lotus, palms facing east. The sun is about. Then it talks about, okay, now see what had happened. let me tell the full story. When Maldeck blew up, where she had previously been, then of course she was brought to Earth. You remember we talked about the last time that one diagram, where you pointed out the site of the cocoons, which was near the continent of Lemuria. Remember that?
Right. Where they were
And
healing in the
then
cocoons.
these ones who were in the cocoons were nurtured and healed by the dolphin people, the mermaids, the mer people, and the fairies. Okay. Anyway, it goes on with the story. Like I say, I would encourage people really to get this book and go over some of these, go over them and over them and over them. There's so much information here that that you can benefit and profit by. And so anyway, this is the kind of some different points in the life of the entity that we call Mother Mary, or like I call her Grandma. Well, that's the joke that she and I have. Here she is, this young looking lady. When she appears, she looks young, like maybe in her 20s or something like that. And here's a white-haired old guy, calling her Grandma.
It's funny.
Yeah,
Inside joke.
yeah, inside joke between me and her. I tried to touch base with her almost every day. Anyway, like I say, there's you can read the rest of some of the stories with the some of the fairies and what they did. It says here that Mary was talking to the animals and all kinds of things during this period of time, and it just some real good fun stories that you want to read about.
Right.
It says here, says the people of Earth must learn to trust themselves and the goddess again. They are afraid to become mature, responsible, and sovereign beings and believe themselves to be only the products of creation and not the creators. They will learn to be co-creators with God and Goddess as they remember the divinity of their own souls and spirits. Now, this puts me in mind of Ho'oponopono. I mean, for those who have studied that technique, and for those who haven't, I suggest you do so because, it helps you to connect with your higher self. Because, like I say, there's basically 4 phrases that Dr. Lou has produced, which would help people to do that. And the first phrase basically goes in, I'm sorry that I have not recognized the divinity of my creation. Please forgive me for that mistake. See? So this is a real good technique. It's very popular. You can find it on the internet. And there's many people, who participate in that. And it's a good way to clear out, a lot of negativity, and it works. Let me put it that way. You'll learn to be co-creators. We must prepare for that time now, as well as for the times in between. You are a radiantly beautiful goddess whose role on earth is to nurture your children, all children, back into their own remembrance of truth. Now, this individual was talking to her, says, I am your male link to other worlds left behind that we might bridge the many worlds as one. Let us go now. So again, like I say, people would be well pleased with the information
Right.
in this report here. I think you'll find great consolation in this information is given. Okay?
It's very exciting. Just reading ahead a little bit, I was looking at how they, had work to do together there. And she still, these cities of light, we've heard about these cities of light in many places, Winston. This is very consistent with other people talking about these cities of light.
Yeah. This fellow, he's passed on now, this Gail Port, who worked with the Northern Utes and Paiutes up there in that area I told you about.
Mhm.
He was regarded as the record keeper. But he had told me about one individual. I have to go back and review some of my notes. I can't remember the full story. But anyway, it talked about the tribulations, so forth. Then it talked about gathering to the great white cities of light as being, the place where we would want to go for refuge, if you want to call it that, and so forth. So yeah, this is a very common theme. There have been many visions about it, among the native people and so forth. And so, there's something to this. And so when we get caught up in all the craziness that's going on all around us, we need to take time, like Scott says, you need to take time to contemplate. Like I say, shut up and listen, and take some of these things into your heart, and become that people, or become that self, to join yourself. Anyway, let's see. During Mary's lifetime on Lemuria, around 50 people were called up to Mount Wabasi, to be initiated in this. The Lemuria mystery schools and spiritual culture were begun and continued to expand beyond that time. When she was 80 years old, Mary completed her purpose on Lemuria and ascended. She became the first ascended master on earth, setting a precedent for many millennia to come. Then it talks about what happened a little bit after that and so forth. So anyway, there you have it. I wanted to tie some of these things together.
Wow, I don't think most people knew that she was the first ascended master
There you go.
on Earth. That's really very interesting.
Yeah. So
Wow.
this is a really an important history. Really, really important. And again, like I say, James Gilliland had told me recently that Mother Mary had become much more active. Matter of fact, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 months ago, we were talking about some of the problems on the planet and stuff going on. He said, He said, Mother Mary has come, and she's not. And he said, she's carrying a great big ball bat.
I hope so, because we want that infusion of that beautiful golden white light, and I don't know what the criteria is for
Well,
that to happen, but there's
like we say in my culture, she opened up a great big can of whoop ass.
yeah, whoop ass. Yeah, that's right. Well,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah, to the ladies, especially those who are trying to come into their power because of the divine feminine, just call in Mother Mary. She'll come. Just call her in, and ask what you need to ask. What do I need to develop as a divine feminine goddess? What do I need to do? And the men too. I mean, like I say, I call her grandma, and so we have some interesting. And when I have things that I need to work on, not so much for myself, but to help others, I always ask her for her help because she's ever so generous to give out that help. Ever so generous.
I think the first thing is we destroy all AI customer service programs. All customer service program, all customers automated customer service programs run by AI be destroyed first.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, yeah, because that really can ruin your day. Nothing shoots me from zero to rage quicker than a customer service interaction with the phone company.
Well,
So,
we do the best we can with what we have. Like I
yeah,
said, we have many that we can call on for help. And so, as we try to do our job here in this third dimension, we can always call the different ones. You see those lights flashing around me?
oh, stuff's going on because the internet. I'm getting
Oh,
signs around me.
there's lights flashing in my room. Anyway,
Okay.
uh, there's some other items I wanted to tie together and as a help.
Are they
Uh,
over your left shoulder, Winston?
no, well, oh my
The left, over that way.
right shoulder would be the left side you're looking at.
Right.
Anyway, let's not get into that.
Okay.
But there's all kinds of things go on. But I wanted to bring up another couple of things just for people's, because again, we're trying to find out how do we do it. I mean, what
Yes.
hands-on,
Yes.
what things do we have
Right.
that we can use to accomplish what we're talking about here?
How to. Yep.
Yeah, how to.
How
Now,
to.
there's another fellow I met when I did that sea cruise. He felt his name is Joey Korn. Let me give you his information right now so that people can write it down. Uh,
Start with a K.
Let me see here. I think I have it. Yeah, you see that?
Ah, yes, we can see it.
Yeah. I met this fella. He lived down in Georgia, but he had first started out his journey. He had written a book about his father, who had been in the concentration camps in Germany, and he had written a book about that to memorialize his father and those kind of things. So that's how he kind of got started. Then he got started working with dowsing,
Mm.
and then he moved through the various progressions in his own life. So he moved, in a spiritual direction. So he started out with dowsing, with Kenneth's muscle testing, and a lot of those different things.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know when you got all that written down, or I can just send it to you.
Yep, we're good. Good.
Okay.
We're good.
All righty. Anyway, he had produced a book that I want to show. Can you see that okay?
Yes. Dowsing.
This is a book that talks about the progress, of his life, what he'd done. And then he moved into clearing. So he tells you in this book, how to do some clearing. He doesn't use the same words excuse me, that we've used in the past. But he talks very much in the same vein. I think I referred to that one book about Slim Sperling. I've talked about that in the past.
Yes, yes.
People can
Okay.
see that.
Okay, Slim Sperling.
And what they had discovered was electrical lines. They call them Hartman lines.
Ley lines?
Not ley lines.
Oh, okay.
No, these are produced by electromagnetism. It's not like, for instance, we're sitting right now here dealing with electricity. This is how we're able to accomplish this. Mm-hmm. Now, what Slim's dead now, but what Slim and Joey both had discovered was these interfering electrical grid patterns that are caused by the electricity. That's what they had discovered. And so what they had gone to work on was how to deal with those electrical lines, excuse me, which were causing interference and physical ailments in people. See? And so let me just refer to Joey's book here and talk about some of this. In essence, let's see, I think there may have been something I wanted to read here. Okay, so in this particular instance, Joey's talking about clearing or dealing with the electrical grids that are within your house. You see a wall socket and people say, well, that's where I get electricity from. But don't you know there's wires running all through your house, setting up these electrical grids? And so, we use electricity, but, for good, but sometimes it can have, detrimental effects. And so not only the electricity that's produced in your home by the wires and appliances and all those different kinds of things, but also with all these competing microwaves and electronic emissions that are just all over the place. I mean, where would you go on the planet to find some place that you wouldn't be struck by all this electricity and electronics and all this kind of stuff?
Right.
And so what Joey does, now this is interesting about Joey, in as much as where he finds negative energy that's causing a negative impact, rather than get rid of it, he simply transmutes it into positive. So that's what I liked about Joey's approach. Was he saying, okay, here's this negative line, here's this, doing this, that, and the other. So what he does is he converts it or transmutes it into good, productive, beneficial energy. That's what Joey does. So anyway, in his book here, he has several methods, but he prays. He prays, and that's how he transmutes the energy. Joey says, hey, the power of God is within you. Use it. And so I'll just read a typical Joey Corn blessing for your entire home.
Nice.
He says, again, he doesn't designate what God it is he's praying to. He said, this is whoever you feel like that is a supreme being. So he's not religious. Obviously he's Jewish, but he don't zero in on any particular one. So here's how the prayer goes. He said, if it be thy will, may the powers of nature converge to increase and enhance the beneficial energies and balance any detrimental energies in this entire house, including the energies related to us as human beings, the energies related to underground streams of water, and other natural forces of the earth. The energies radiating from electrical devices and Hartman and Curry grid lines throughout my home and property, for all the members of this household, for all those who will visit, for our pets and plants, and for all of life, for now and into the future, for as long as it is appropriate. In deepest gratitude, amen. So this would be a typical prayer that he would pray, again, to remove any detrimental energy and to convert it into a beneficial energy. And so he goes through his book, and then I wanted to show, let's see if I can find it here. Well, it's pretty small, so you might not see it.
What page?
Well,
Oh, did you notice what page that was on? That's okay if you don't.
page 103 of the book. And again, the reason I gave that information out of how you can be contacted is so people can get this book for one thing. But the other things, he does clearings on houses, on your home.
Mm-hmm.
He can clear your home from where he's at.
Oh.
And he said what he had done was that he had gone through his own home and had diagrammed and laid out all the different grids and all these kind of different things. And he had cleared all that and turned it into productive energy instead of negative energy. And so what he did, he created a template. And as I've talked to him about this, what he did say was that if someone was, at some distant place, he said, I don't need to come to your house to do this. So when he has people that contact him and say, can you clear my house? He says, okay. He says, just create a layout for your house. In other words, the rooms and different, appliances and different things like that. And what he does, he takes your template and puts his template over it. And then he clears your home from a distance. So that's the reason I wanted to give that information out for those that might have, trouble at their homes with, electrical energies or Hartman lines and all these different things, that people suffer with. This, again, I'm just trying to give people, alternatives to the trouble they find. And so Joey is very proficient at this. And so that's why I gave that information out.
Interesting.
And so if you think it would be beneficial, you can contact him. He gave his phone number out, for crying out loud. I
He's
never
gonna
do
get
that.
busy. He's gonna get busy.
He's going to get busy now. Look what
I
happened to
think
poor
so.
old Scott when we brought Scott on.
I know. That's right. I
Anyway,
also,
Joey's just an exceptionally fine fellow. And he has only the very best, desires for people. And that's why he's willing to deal with people on a one-to-one. Go ahead.
well, that's nice, Winston. I also wanted to just mention that I wanted to also again thank publicly our friends Eddie Seti for these lovely gifts. You got yours there, Winston. You see that? Winston's got his. Ooh, very lovely.
Right here over the computer.
And the maker of these pyramids that are infused with lovely crystal energies and gold and copper and all kinds of beautiful little things, some silver and spirals and things of that nature.
Coils.
There's Merkabas and sacred geometry designs on the inside, if you could see that. Is Light by Light, so it's Lite by the Light, Light, and the creator is Michelle Hood. And I don't have the link to her website, but it's Michelle Hood, Hood. And these, here's another one of a different size. These stay by my computer. They suggested I keep them by my computer so that I can, because I have all this radiation around me, and it does help to clear some of this energy. And there's crystals inside of it, and they're really beautiful. But these are what Joey's talking about here is, I think, something everybody should do. in their home
Yeah.
is clear and transmute, somehow get that energy
Well,
transmuted.
not just for your home, but
Yeah.
anywhere he goes.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's out in the park, if he's in a restaurant or
Mhm.
whatever,
Mhm.
he uses similar prayers like this,
Right.
for blessing on your food,
Right.
or to bless your microwave oven or whatever. And so that's the formula that Joey's come up with,
Mhm.
to assist in that. Now again, I mentioned Slim Sperling, and so I want to read one of these graphic examples of
Mhm.
how he had used dowsing and the
Well, we're
redirection.
we're a little out of time though, Winston. We're at a little bit past time, so
Well, I'm going to read this one,
okay.
so you're going to have to go with it.
All right then.
Anyway, talking about cancer, epilepsy, and dysfunctional things. Well, okay, I won't read the whole thing. It is quite long, but in essence, what Slim had done
Mhm.
was he had gone. It was a friend of his. It was actually a friend who was in the hospital. He had a serious cancer, and he went in to the friend's room and he doused the room to see where the negative energies, and they were converging directly on this guy's head as he laid in the hospital bed. So Slim worked with the nurses to get the room rearranged, because a hospital is just full of electricity going every which
Yeah.
way. And so he worked with the nurses to rearrange the hospital bed so he wouldn't be in that direct thing. And then he used some copper wires in the room to divert the electrical grid so that it would not affect his friend. And instead of dying, his friend left that hospital well.
Wow.
So again, we have these different ones that we've come upon. Like I say, I've referred to Slim's book, to Joey's book here, to all these different things, as a help to people. I mean, so many times, it's easy enough to see the problem, but how do we find the solutions to the problem? And so that's, like
Right.
I say, as far as commerce has been for the last 14 years,
Mhm.
I have been solutions in commerce. Again, the old saying is that either you can be a part of the problem or you can be a part of the solution.
Exactly.
So what I've wanted to do and what I've done is to bring solutions to people so that they can do something about it instead of sitting around crying and whining. so so get up off your backside if you have problems and go do something about it. That's
This is
all I'm
great.
saying.
This is great. Well, I mean, it's a great resource, Winston. So thank you very much,
Oh
because
yeah,
we need resources. If people can't really address it if they don't know it exists, that there's solutions
yeah,
that exist, like
yeah.
just like solutions in commerce, exactly. So there are solutions, but they're you have to look for it. I mean, there's not going to come jumping at you.
No,
It's
it's
going.
about self empowerment.
Yeah,
Self
exactly.
empowerment, and you can't get in touch with your higher self as long as you're a physical wimp. It's about self empowerment. Get up, get something done. Like I say, win, lose, or draw. Go for it. I learned this I mean, when I was a young kid, I mean, I used to wear my feelings on my sleeve. Like, you hear that expression where
Yep.
I, and I would not. I would not go with the bully. I mean, I don't care if I got my butt kicked pretty bad.
Yeah.
Anybody try to bully me, and I was swinging, you know. And so I've kind of gotten away from that technique. But I don't take I don't suffer bullies, and
That's right.
so we have to get busy
Sensitive to that.
sometimes, And so I'm trying to give a few tools either in commerce
Mm,
or in some of these other areas, where the people could stop being bullied, and come into their own power. We have to. We can't evolve spiritually as long as we're being bullied.
that's
So,
right.
so get off it.
Okay.
Anyway, that's pretty much what I had to say today. I've tried to tie together a few things. Like I say, I go back and review, these
Right.
interviews you do, and then sometimes it occurs to me that there was something else I could have put into that interview that may have been helpful to some. So that's what I'm kind of doing today. It's kind of random here. I got about 4 or 5 different things I've talked about, but I'm just trying to tie a lot of this stuff together.
Well, you're trying to bring solutions, and in some ways, these things do connect, and I think it will resonate with folks.
I hope so.
And if they've been following our previous reports, Winston, this just adds to the knowledge base that they already have,
Yeah.
and it's really lovely. So we do appreciate it. Thank you so much for bringing this to our viewers, Winston. Really appreciate it.
Well, who knows what we're going to talk about next time? We're hoping for a few changes here shortly. So,
That would be good.
but again, I really like today being April the 6th. You know, it's actually Jesus' birthday. So happy birthday, Jesus. And
Happy birthday, Jesus.
yeah, and thank you, Mother Mary, for bringing him to us. And
Yeah.
so we have all these things to be grateful and thankful for.
Absolutely, absolutely, and friends like Winston.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for being there. Well, you're doing your part. He's doing his part. We're all doing our part, and we do appreciate it, Winston, every week. Very,
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very. We're very dedicated to what we do here. We're on a mission, so we're getting it done. So thank you so much. We'll all see all of our viewers next week for another another episode of Country Roads. We will be back on Monday with our POTUS report as usual. Those links to access the reports will be published on the website. So it's just how we have to do it right now till we get through this tough spot. Lots of interesting news with Q, lots of things going on. I think we're getting ready to see some arrests. I'm hoping it's like 25,000 or something now, the number of sealed indictments. It's about time, though, they start arresting people. It's like drawing out. It's kind of waiting. Everybody's waiting for something to be noticeable. So, Winston, thank you. Have a great weekend. Hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, just again, going back to the start, you know, as a word of caution, just be careful how you stop those chainsaws.
Oh my goodness, you got to and then even think of that is like really a little concerning. Okay, so God, I don't know how they did that. Funny, it's funny. It could be a translation
Okay.
thing, I think, like you said. So everybody, thank you so much. Remember to visit us on our new Patreon site, and of course, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on YouTube on our new channel, but please don't forget to follow us on BitChute because we will be there. That is our new home. And also, on our 24/7 news page on Facebook, we post all the latest news there. So please feel free to go there and look up, subscribe, follow, and look up the latest news that's going on. That's not in mainstream media narrative, something I try to post the news that's the real news, not the fake news. So we'll see everybody next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. And you, Winston. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.